Hello, everyone. This is the Static Site Editor Product and Design weekly call for August 31st, and we'll jump right into the agenda. I only had two small topics to discuss, and then I'll turn it over to you, Michael. But the first, as I was giving some more thought recently to the feedback we've been getting about putting the Static Site Editor on the handbook and how some of our marketing pages, some of the pages that live on the marketing site, look a lot like handbook pages because they use the same middleman template. The static site editor is not configured to work with them, so there's a little bit of confusion. Down the road, the marketing site will evolve. There will be some shared design language, I'm sure, but it might be helpful in the next milestone to look at some quick wins for differentiating on the handbook pages between the marketing site and the handbook. You don't need to come up with exact solutions, but it might be good to pick that one up. I think I would prioritize that. Even if it's just slightly different color treatments or how we handle the table of contents or whatever. I don't need a solution here, but I think that'll probably get I'd like to maybe get that into 13.5. So over the next couple of weeks, we could identify some quick wins on the front end. Shouldn't be too disruptive to our, not wide sweeping architectural changes, but something we can just tweak in the handbook CSS or page template. That'd be great. And I see linked the issue.
So there's an issue that we created for this. So this is, we created this off the back of a retro meeting once, and we looped in the marketing team on it because it kind of like some of the illustrations, Vic Bell, one of the designers on the team, is actually working on a lot on illustrations. So we thought that we would leverage them, and it looks like they're looking to tackle by the 11th of September. That's what I'm assuming that little milestone thing means. I think there's a date somewhere on it. Yeah, milestone September 11th there. So it looks like it's on their radar to look at. Yeah, we'll see from there. But we can use this to if you have any other ideas to visually change it, then yeah, I think that might be good. At the moment, right now, the kind of play that everyone seems to have in their mind is changing that purple banner. But if there's something else like the table of contents, yeah, I think that might be an interesting area to play around with too.
Yeah, I'll give it some more thought. And if you could do so, also just toss out ideas over the next week. I think that would be helpful. This is a good start, and we can keep it small and iterate. I think we'll just keep it in mind over the next few releases probably, and try and just chip away at it. And over the next couple months, we'll have a little bit of divergence, and that would probably be a good thing.
Yeah, I think 13.5 is safe.
Yeah, cool. And the last topic I want to bring up is for 13.5, I'd love to prioritize adding the MR title and description options when you submit a change from the static site editor. We've been doing that solution validation for the publishing workflow, and this is feedback that's come up repeatedly about just best practices with MRs and people's desire to provide the context when they're submitting their changes, rather than going in and editing the MR afterwards. I think it would be good to pare that solution validation down, if possible, to provide just the title and description fields when submitting, and then we can get to the other things like adding an assignee and putting it on a existing MR, putting the change on an existing MR. We can do those later, in my opinion. So that's just my opinion, though. If you disagree, feel free to, but I think we could probably get to this in 13.5 if we keep it small.
Yeah, from the last round, the MR title and descriptions were I would say strongly received, like it was positive, like there wasn't much to iterate on that. I think we continued that with having that modal pop up from the submit changes or publish changes button, whatever the main primary CTA will be. I think that will still hold true. And then if I would kind of segue to the solution validation iteration from the last round is more around like linking to existing MR, kind of tighten up the flows between whatever draft means to publish, or like whether we have that. That's probably the areas that the solution validation really needs. But I think title descriptions were pretty well received.
Cool. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that there's an issue that gets on the planning issue that is clearly just this iteration of the MR and exactly what we're looking for as far as acceptance criteria. And then if there's any design work you think needs to be adjusted to accommodate just those things, or if you want to treat it differently in this iteration on the front end, you can attach the designs on there and we can just kind of take it in. I don't know if you want to do a quick round of solution validation on Slack, or like if you have any uncertainty, we can figure something out, hopefully not hold up 13.5, but I think, yeah, let's keep it small. I think it'd be a great addition to the feature. That's all I had for today. So I'll turn it over to you on some of the research efforts.
Yep. So on the research efforts, we're doing asynchronous, like unmoderated testing for editing front matter. I think people are up for helping out doing unmoderated research, but the platform choice that we're using right now is like not ideal. So if some people who are like really keen on helping out have found workarounds to use it. So I'm going to feedback feedback back to the UX research team. But some of these, if it becomes too problematic, I might just run them as like moderated calls because it might be easier. So that's that. Category maturity, did 2 last week. Is really good. Some people haven't even made any handbook changes since they joined GitLab. So it was actually a first user experience. So got to see some of that. There's 6 more scheduled for this week and a few more over the following 2 weeks. So I think the category maturity thing is going to be done in time by the end of this milestone. And then, yeah, on my plate is, like I had talked to earlier, was just kind of refining the solution to merge, using existing MR and save drafts and those kind of flows that needed a lot more clarification from the last round. So that's what my solution validation is around, but we can see how that goes down. So with my bandwidth for this week, I suspect that the first half will be just like cleaning a bit of that flow up and then sharing that around. And then towards the end of this week or early next week is probably when we'll start recruiting again for solution validation for that iteration.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to hear that you found people that hadn't made a handbook change at all, and that's great context, and hopefully exactly who we're trying to reach with our feature. So it's really good to hear.
One funny user experience I had this morning, and I don't think there's anything that can be done about it. I just thought it was funny. I needed to make a quick handbook update, so I said, all right, I'll use it, and I went into the WYSIWYG by default, and I typed my link as marked down in the WYSIWYG editor and clicked submit MR, and then I had to go back which of course made that like an embedded link with the brackets and stuff. Now, it was just force of habit. I don't think that there's anything you can do about it.
We gotta get those shortcuts in there.
Yeah, that goes to shortcuts, and even like in the category maturity tests where I'm asking people to add in a bulleted list. What people are doing is like cut and pasting the dashes into into the page itself, but without shortcuts, they don't render as bullet points, but they look legit because they're dashes anyways. And with our new kind of formatting rules, dashes will be converted to bullets. Technically, it's right, but it's a gray area. So yeah, it could open the doors to look into adding shortcuts, but I know that's dependent on the editor choice that we're going to go
Yeah.
with. So I know that's on kind of pause, but it's in front of mind.
I mean, ideally, we pick a solution for the new editor that already has those shortcuts, because I know that they exist in some of the more mature editors. But what's interesting about that, I didn't mean to cut you off, Chad. I want to get back to you, but you pinged me on that comment, Michael, in Dovetail. And what's interesting to check the MR, and unless you fixed it or the other person fixed it, it did still render correctly on the final output. So even though they didn't use the WYSIWYG editor quote correctly and the formatting wasn't interpreted correctly by the WYSIWYG editor, the resulting MR was properly formatted as a unordered list. So at least thumbs up to Toast UI to get that right, even if it wasn't rendering correctly.
So how would a shortcut have helped my problem of just like typing a markdown link syntax into the WYSIWYG? Would it have like detected and converted it, or is this what you're saying, or what?
Yeah, that's the idea. Is as soon as we can figure out with certainty that that's what you're doing is making a link, is we would reformat it probably when you close the parentheses on the link itself, and hit space, and it would shorten it to just the
cool.
text input, underline it, and then actually create a link in the background.
That would be great, because I can see myself doing that all the time and
Yes.
never learning.
Same thing goes. I was working with someone on another project and getting some feedback, and they were continually still typing the pound signs into headings in the WYSIWYG editor. And that's the perfect use case for that. It's like 2 pound signs in space. You should be formatting this as an H2 instead of having to go up and click H2. But yeah, it's dependent on a decision on the editor platform. I hope we can get there soon, because that's how I like to work. One last thing actually that I forgot to add the agenda was I had an interesting call after our morning engineering weekly meeting with some folks from sales who one of them was in the group conversation a couple weeks ago, and I followed up asking, why were you curious about this, and what customers do you have that would be interested in using this? Are there any using Pages now, and are they having trouble collaborating on content? I got 2 or 3 potential leads for larger, paying customers that are using Pages to host various types of sites. And one in particular that sounds really interesting that I might be joining a monthly check-in call with in a couple weeks. So I'll keep you all informed as I learn more about the needs of those, larger companies that are collaborating on content. There was one particular use case that I thought was relevant to what we were talking about last week around personas, and it was this is a company that is fairly large, has multiple organizations within the company. They have a big install of GitLab that they all use, but there's only one engineering team, and there's 2 other teams, 2 other groups that use GitLab mostly just for like the plan features, like issues and things like that. But they host a page, they host a website on Pages, and the folks from sales felt like they would be very, very interested in the static site editor. So I offered up my time, and hopefully we'll follow up with more information, more specific use cases and persona, information that we can use to build our personas.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been hard for me to pin down exactly how to get in front of customers that are already paying. Like there's a lot of, anecdotal or, well, internal, of course, but the external data sources are mostly anecdotal or based off of, what people generally are doing in this space, and not necessarily like who is actually buying GitLab or actually using GitLab and what they need. So obviously it'd be great to bring in everybody and get a whole bunch of new people to join the platform just for the static site editor. But I do think our path to adoption in the near term is getting people who are already using Pages or already using GitLab to find the feature useful. And so this would be a great way to do that. And I hope that it's the beginning of many calls that I can have with customers to understand their challenges with, collaborating on content on static sites, and why they may have chosen Pages or why they may have not chosen Pages to host their content. Those would probably be really insightful conversations, hoping to have more of them.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That's awesome.
And with that, I'm all set for today. Anybody else have anything? Chad, Catherine, you want to add anything to the agenda?
Nothing for me.
Cool.
No, thanks.
Stop the recording.